Fans, we are back live once again on the Cheap Heat Productions podcast empire. My name is Jack Kilby, no gimmicks guy on the social platforms. And today I have an extremely rare and interesting interview with a man that those of us that fondly remember the Monday Night Wars certainly remember him and his involvement in one of the, to this day, the most fondest regarded stables of all time and his interesting role within that. But beyond that, he is the man who was known as Sick Boy, and I would be talking about Scott Vick. Scott, thanks so much for coming on today.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I guess when we're looking at an individual's career, fans appreciate the perspective in terms of when you were growing up, were you a fan of the business and did you follow any particular companies if you were?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, earliest memories, I think about 8, 10, somewhere in there, really started paying attention, being able to perceive wrestling and get the concept of it. I was huge born in Charlotte and grew up in South Carolina and the NWA, that was the hotbed. So for me, it was the NWA territory, and it was, the Four Horsemen and Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA and that whole roster. I was never a big WWF guy, just because, I would say WWF later, I want to say up to the 90s. I liked it when WWF had a little more of that reality to me with Ravishing Rick Rude there and Mr. Perfect, especially early, obviously with Hogan and Piper and those things. And then I just didn't like the gimmicky aspect that WWF had. And of course, not being from up north, NWA was the deal, and it was just more reality based to me. There was some aspects of it that were, gimmicky. That's just the business. But I love the Jim Cornettes and the Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express. And it was just so hot. I'd go to the Township Auditorium in Columbia as a kid, and it just, it mesmerized me because I was into comics and, into Conan the Barbarian, and stuff. And that it just captivated me. At that time, I don't think it was something I wanted. I thought, hey, this is what I want to do. I just knew it was really awesome. I was into sports, at 10, it was football, baseball, basketball. And then, at that point, I was like, I kind of started getting into that. I want to be a football player in NFL. And that's kind of where it went. But wrestling was always there.
Mm-hmm. And you had a real promising path you were following in college football at the time, but then, to my understanding, a knee injury derailed that. How did that setback lead you into professional wrestling and signing with WCW in '96?
Well, we'll go back to high school for that. And it's a pretty unique, I think, pretty cool story. Not a lot of people know this, but I moved from Columbia. I moved to Columbia to Hilton Head, South Carolina, and went to high school in Hilton Head. And I was my sophomore year. Sean O'Hare and I went to high school together. We were friends. Sean had just at the time started really getting into. He wasn't an athletic guy. He didn't do anything athletically in high school. He had just kind of started, I think at the time, just started getting into some mixed martial arts stuff. And we went to the Savannah Civic Center for a WCW house show. And the ring announcer, Gary Michael Capetta at the time, came up to us at intermission because Sean was 6'4", 6'5". Yeah, he was a lot leaner then. He was really skinny at that point. He hadn't started really. I think he just really started getting into the weights and stuff. And I was probably already 6'3". He was a senior. I was a sophomore. I was probably 210 at the time. And he introduced himself and said, "Hey, I'm not only a ring announcer, but I'm a talent scout for WCW," and was really interested in us. He goes, "You guys are big guy, what's your situation," kind of thing. And he said, "I will be at one of the hotels in downtown Savannah. Please meet me. I'd like to talk to you." Sean wanted nothing to do with it. I went and talked to him, and he was very interested in, once high school was done, coming to Atlanta and training and going down the wrestling path. And I told him, I said, that's awesome. It's amazing. But I said, football's my path right now. And this is where I want to go. And my dreams to play in the NFL. And he was gracious enough to give me his card and said, if anything ever changes, call me. And so that's what led to that. So, went to college, had a really bad, dislocated my knee, like a full 180-degree rotation, like hills. My toes were to the ground, my heel was to the sky. And it was as bad of an injury as it was even worse psychological for me. And it was at that time where, I tried to come back with it, and it really wasn't there. Like I said, it's almost like that Rocky III losing the eye of the tiger thing. For me, psychologically, I was just not there for it. And it was about that time where I was just like, this wrestling thing sounds pretty cool, because Nitro had just really started taking off. And actually what really spawned it, a cool little side note, my roommate, we were playing at University of South Carolina, and my roommate, who played, we had gone to a house show at the Township Auditorium, and Brian Pillman was on it. Well, one of my college coaches was John Harbaugh, who was roommates with Pillman at Miami of Ohio. And John had said, hey, if you ever, come across, he knew I was a big wrestling fan, and and he said, if you ever, he told me the story with Brian. And so I just said, hey, man, I'm just going to try to see if we can get Pillman somehow. And we waited around after the show and said, hey, I know Brian Pillman, went to John Harbaugh, kind of started explaining it to him, said was my coach. And I said, will you let him know we're out here? And they're like, yeah. And we're kind of sitting there thinking, he's not going to come out. And oh my gosh, here comes Pillman. And of course, Pillman was kind of like, where's John? And I think he kind of mixed up what we told him. And I was like, I don't know. I just told, I don't even remember who I spoke to. I think it was a ring announcer at the time. It wasn't Michael Competta, because I would have known him. But I said, no, you misunderstand. I said, John was my position coach, and he was like, really at that, now more receptive a little bit. And I just said, hey, we're really thinking about getting into wrestling, because now I'm 6'4" and a half-ish. My buddy's 6'6", 300. I'm 250, 260. And he goes, well, Lex and I are going to be at the Gold's Gym tomorrow morning. This is a Sunday night. He goes, we're going to train at Gold's and then head to Florence for Nitro. He told us the time, and of course we were like thinking, of course, we're in the car going, oh, this is great, this is really cool, and because that was a gym we trained at, so we get there, but we're thinking, yes, he was probably just BSing us a bit, and sure enough, we show up at the time he said, and they were there, and we talked to both of them and said, told him what we were looking at doing. And I had known Del Wilkes, who had played at South Carolina, the Patriot, and actually met him in middle school, because he trained at a gym in Columbia, like before he really started hitting wrestling big. And I had met him because I used to sweep the floors there at like 13 years old, and get my free workouts and stuff, and met him there. And so he had mentioned like Moolah, because I think that's where he had started, the Fabulous Moolah, because she was in Columbia. And so he mentioned that to Brian and Lex, and they were like, yeah, don't go that route. Like, if you can, anything you can do, get to Atlanta. That's where you want to be. He gave us a little bit of advice, talked to us for a little while, and left. And I want to say at that point, that's where I was just like, okay, I'm full-fledged now. I'm going to focus everything on this. I was still in school at the time, but I was like, I'm going to focus everything on this and look at heading up once school is done, in the summer and going to Atlanta. And my roommate was kind of the same opinion. So that was our catapult into wrestling. And we showed up in Atlanta. Or actually, I'm sorry. I at that point I called. I kept that card from Capetta, and I called, and someone answered the phone and explained the situation. They said, "Well, he's no longer with the company." And I just had told them, he'd given this card and said he wanted us, interested in training as a talent scout. And they said, "Well, come to Atlanta anyways. If he gave you the card and talked to you, like we'll love to take a look at you." And so the summer of it was the summer of '96, we headed to Atlanta.
Wow, that's a really cool story. What were your first thoughts when I've had the fortunate circumstance to interview so many WCW talents that went through the power plant. What was that like for you? Even though you're an athlete and a big guy, what was that like to be immersed there at the start? And what were some of the challenges that you faced there?
Right off the bat, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it wasn't weird at the time. That economy was really weird there because of the Olympics. They had moved everything they had moved all the base of operations for WCW to Orlando just because of the Olympics. And they were like, well, we'll give you a test, kind of see where you're at, your athletic skills, things like that. I really had no idea what I was walking into. I thought it was just like, hey, we've come in here and sign you kind of thing, or I figured some type of a workout. And we started that on a Wednesday, and it was absolutely, I think there in my group, there at the end of it, there was 3 or 4 of us left, and there was about 20 guys that were there. Mm-hmm. Matt Weesey, Horseshoe, Luther Reigns was a part of that group. My roommate, my friend Craig Phillips, who went on to do some indie wrestling and things like that. He made it. He lasted through it, and like I said, a couple others. And we did 3 days of it, and it was just absolutely brutal. I mean, it was just, I'd never felt anything like that. And I'd been through, 3 a days. I mean, actually my high school football is worse than college, just in terms of like, just, the old school mentality of 3 a days in the summer, camp and things like that. And, been pushed hard. And I just pushed myself naturally because I was like, I want to be a professional athlete. I want to play in the NFL. And, so wrestling just that was an eye-opening experience. And the worst part is I was wearing amateur wrestling shoes through this workout. And the very first day, when we were doing bumps in the ring, and we would cut a flip, and they'd teach us to land, put your feet flat down, hitting. I didn't hit right, and I bruised heel. I had a heel bruise. And I don't know if you've ever had that, but I've had it twice, and it's one of the most painful, just annoying, painful things you can do, because you can't put any weight. It feels like there's like a railroad spike in your heel. And I did that about 2 hours into the workout. And I mean, those things were just brutal, man. We would do air squats, like 1,000 of them total. and then it was push-ups, and then it was crunches, and then it was go outside and run on an incline, and it was insane. And I'm doing it on one leg on the first day. I think at first it wasn't as bad that second half, because I think my adrenaline was really going at that point. I felt it and was able to get through it, but the next day, like, I couldn't walk. I mean, the only way I could walk was like put my toe down on my right foot and walk with my heel up in the air. And I was just my back had rope burns and bruises from those ropes in WCW, because those jokers were cable wrapped in a hard, like, plastic. And I was just, I mean, it was just a deep purple dark bruising under, just hitting the ropes. And that was just one day of it. And the second day was worse. I mean, waking up that morning, I was like, I mean, my roommate was like, man, had you said, let's don't go back, he goes, I wouldn't have gone. It was that bad. And I was like, no, we're going and doing this. So the second day, I'm doing all this with one leg, gimping through it. And, I mean, man, we probably worked out. I think that I could be wrong, but I think we did like an hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning. Then they gave us a little break for like lunch, and then we did more in the afternoon, another hour, maybe two. I'm not quite certain, but somewhere in there. It was long and it was brutal. And the last half was a little bit easier, just in terms of, I mean, I shouldn't say easier, but it wasn't as brutal on the running and the squats. And, that's just not something you're prepared for. I mean, we would just sit there and squat for 10 minutes. And if anybody stopped, if anybody complained, I mean, guys would start throwing up, puking, falling down, they're done. And I'm talking, you'd have these real jacked up guys come in and, looked really good in shape, and they would be like the first one's gone. So the third day, like I said, since the office had been moved down, this was the final day of the workout, and we were on the second half of the day. So we were doing a drill called gauntlets, and they had 3 rings in the warehouse, and you would have to slide in the ring, hit a rope, or hit both ropes, take a bump, roll out, and go through all 3 rings like that. Well, I was gimping along, just struggling, as doing as much as I could. And Dwayne Bruce, Sarge, had not been there for the first 2 days because he had been working down in Florida. And he came in, I think, around lunch or somewhere in there. It was, I think, running it. It was Mike Winter and Pez Watley were doing the workout that we've been doing for the last 2 days. And I'm sitting there gimping, and I had almost zero interaction with Sarge until he grabbed me by the back of the neck and was like, "Get the hell out of my house, you son of a bitch! You're lagging, you're gimping, you're done, you're finished. Get out of here. You don't have," and took me right out the front door, threw me out.
Wow.
And I just kind of hit and roll. And I mean, he didn't throw me so hard I couldn't control, but I was so tired. I was so hurt. I just couldn't. I was like, I can't run any further. I just hit and rolled, and I went and sat on the steps, and I was like, well, this is it for me, I guess, I just didn't know what to think. And about that time, I felt an arm around me, and it was Pez, and he goes, "Come on, get up," and took me back in, and we went into like the little locker room area that we had, and I was sitting on like a training table, and Pez goes, "Hey man, you'll be fine," and he walked out, and then in comes Sarge, and it was one of the coolest things. I've got a few things that I really remember in wrestling and that are kind of strong points for me, and this was one. And Sarge came in, and he put his hand out, and he said, I want to apologize. He said, I had no idea you had that injury, and you had been going through this for the last two and a half days. with this, and you'd done everything. You didn't miss anything. You stayed with it. You went through it. And he said, I just want to apologize. And from that point on, I mean, we became good friends, and he was a good mentor, and he's hard as nails, and he just thought I was like being lazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was my intro into WCW and the power plant.
Wow, that sounds like one of the roughest accounts I've ever heard. Was Ole Anderson still there when you were there? Was he gone?
He was gone. Joe Hamilton was running it at the time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Did you go through all these physical challenges, etc., and you prove yourself that you're tough enough for the business? Did they prepare you? Because I noticed that you debuted, in '97 on TV as another incarnation in a very high profile match against DDP. How did they prepare you for that side of here's the hard cam, here's how a match is laid out from all that physical work? They obviously saw something in you, and then what was the non in ring or physical side? How did they prepare you for that debut?
Actually, not. I mean, not much. Other than are you referring to the Lance Ringo?
Yeah, when you made your debut on TV there, yeah.
I'll circle back to that because I think you'll find this pretty interesting. So before we actually signed with WCW, like I said, they had been dragging they were just dragging their feet on the signing, just being with the Olympics, and so I ended up my roommate, my college roommate, my buddy Craig Phillips had some personal stuff with his family, and so I think something had happened, and he went his way, I went my way, and I started rooming with Horseshoe, and this was before we were signed, and I remember we were sitting there, and it was Christmas, it was December, and Matt goes, "Hey man, you want to roll down to Daytona? WWF is going to be there." I'm like, I think it's high school friends or childhood friends, something like that, with Jack Doan, who's the referee in WWF. And I was like, hell yeah, let's roll down there. So we just jumped in the car and went down to Daytona, and we're sitting there in the back, and Vince came up to us, and he was like, "Who are you guys?" Because I mean, Matt. I mean, you see Matt's size, and I mean, Matt was a lot more muscular than I was, and so we told him what we were doing, and we said, we've been training, WCW at the power plant. And he goes, "Are you under contract?" And we said, "No." And he goes, "I want to see a video of you. Like, send me some footage." And of course, we're like, because it's funny now. We were at this, at this point. Like I said, I'd never really had any WWF aspirations, but and they weren't doing that well at that time, because I think Stone Cold was ringmaster, and it was bad. I think they were just really down at the time, and so we ended up and went back. This is a good little nugget. Went back to the power plant and filmed a match at the power plant and sent that to Vince.
That's awesome.
And the guys that were filming it were Brian Clark, Wrath, Adam Baum, Kidman was there, Chris Kanyon, Ray Lloyd Glacier, and a couple other guys. Because I got that's how I really accelerated and got the Lance Ringo, and that's why I'm kind of going back to give this background to the Lance Ringo. While I was training at the power plant, Chris and Brian Clark and Ray and those guys were down there working on the whole the the Glacier gimmick, the whole Mortal Kombat thing. And I picked up on it really fast, the business. I could just, I could move, I could throw punches. I was already doing springboard stuff. I was doing stuff that, no guy, only cruiserweights were doing any of the springboard or flips. And I was doing all that. But I mean, I was like, everything was really solid, and I just picked things up really quick. And Chris Canyon noticed that. And Chris introduced himself and literally was like, you know what? You need to come work with us. And he was referring to Brian Clark and Kidman. They were all friends, and they were all friends with Paige. So I just started working with them. And I would, because they were down there every day, and we get there 9 a.m. and work till 3 or 4 p.m. And Chris really taught me a lot of stuff. Along with, I did stuff with Pez and Mike Winter and Sarge, who was there as well. But they just saw they're like, you're just developing faster than everybody else, because it was slow. Because it's just that it takes people a while to get a grasp of it, just from the timing standpoint, and I think just the perception, the depth perception, and I could just really judge how to punch somebody like I'm laying it in there. And I mean, I had that almost instantly. It just wasn't like I didn't have to work on it. Like a lot of guys would go and like punch at the wall, for 20 minutes, do kicks, and it just, I didn't have to. That part was just, I think Chris saw, like, he goes, you just need to start learning psychology, and and we can work things faster. So that was my end. And like I said, that was almost like, it was almost like a click in a way, with Kidman and Paige and Glacier, and those guys. And they were like, we've told Paige about you. He's going to come down here and see if you got what, it takes, I guess, kind of thing. And so I guess my test was, Paige came down and we did this drill where he shot me off the ropes. I would take the tackle, he'd cover, I'd kick out, then I'd hit the ropes, tackle him, cover, he'd kick out. And Chris just said, this is what he's going to do. Just keep going. Whatever you do, just keep going. So I don't know. We did that for like 10 minutes.
Wow.
And then finally he was like, and so it was like, I guess I was like at that point, one of the crew. I passed the initiation test. And so I'm training now with Chris and those guys. So now let's jump back to now we're back at the Daytona thing. And so that's where we're back at now at the power plant. And I knew all those guys. So yeah, we're filming a match, sent that to Vince. And he flew us up to Stanford.
Wow.
Off of that match from the power plant. And so we're up there and we fly and meet Bruce Pritchard. And we did a match for them there. And they're, at that time they didn't have any type of a developmental system at all. I think they were using Memphis, but they weren't signing guys to send them there. The way they laid it out to us, Bruce was like, hey, we want to offer you guys a contract. And he said, the way we do it, I think it was like for like $50,000 or something like that. He said, but we'll cover all your expenses. You'll come here, we'll put you up in an apartment. We'll pay for everything, and you'll just train. And so Matt and I talked about it, and I was like, I don't know, man. I'm like really feeling like, just not because they offered it. We just got to see we had seen WCW a little bit, but we really got to see like the studio at WWF and the facility, and going over there and working out at the headquarters, and it just looked so professional, and just they were everybody was really great that we met there. And Matt and I flying back, we're like, I think let's take it. First of all, we've got a contract. We don't have one with WCW. And I said, my only thing is I've got to say something to Paige because I want to be professional about it. We've been training at the power plant, and I need to tell Paige. And so I told him, and Paige was like, hey, before you do anything, let me talk to Eric Bischoff. And so he did. And this was on a Monday. They had us come down to, actually ironic as it is, Savannah Civic Center. They were doing a nitro there, which is where it all kind of really started for me. Met with Eric and just kind of explained the situation to him. And he said, well, he goes, you guys handled yourself professionally. Really appreciate you coming forward and saying, what you said. He goes, I really want to keep you. He goes, I think Vince is going to offer you this amount. He goes, I'll give you 75 or something like that. So it was a little bit more, obviously, than, the WWF contract. And so we were like, hey, thanks. And he said, no hard feelings, but you have until Wednesday to let me know what you're doing, or this offer's off the table. So Matt and I went back to the hotel and we were talking. At that point, we were still WWF. It wasn't about the money. We just both felt like that was where we needed to go. Mm-hmm. It was going to be a little bit harder going that route than the WCW route. So Tuesday we're supposed to get the contracts and we haven't gotten anything. So we called Bruce, and Bruce is like, well, they should have been there. FedEx they're supposed to get there, should be there by Wednesday. And we were like, listen, man, we've got an offer from, because we told him, we said, we went and let them know because we've been training there. And this isn't about trying to renegotiate or get more money. They just offered us, like, we want to sign with you, but that deal's off the table and we don't have anything in our hands. If we don't get those contracts by Wednesday. And at that point, Bruce was like, he goes, honestly, they should be there. If they're not, then sign there. He goes, to full disclosure, he goes, we're just not in a good place right now. He goes, honestly, you'd probably be better off there. But if this is what you want to really do and the contracts get there, they should be there, and you want to sign them. But if not, go there and learn as much as you can. He said, you'll be back here in 4 years if this is where you want to be. Mm-hmm. And of course the contracts didn't make it. I never saw the contracts. I don't know what happened with it. But at that point, we signed with WCW. And then continue training, and that's where the Lance Ringo part comes in. And I wish I could give a better time frame on signing that to when Ringo happened. It wasn't too long after that, but I just been training, and I've heard nothing, and I really haven't done. I think I had maybe done like one like indie show. Most of my matches were down at the power plant with Chris and guys that were there. And I remember out of the blue, it was a Sunday night. I was at a restaurant having dinner with a future flock member, Ron Reese, because we were all friends, and Chris Canyon and a couple other people. And Canyon gets a phone call. And he hands me the phone, and it's, yo, brother, you're flying to Roanoke tomorrow for, you're going to wrestle me on Monday night Nitro. And I'm like, I had no gear other than fortunately I had some tight. I mean, I had like one pair of tights made up at the time. I had no wrestling boots. I didn't have anything because I just didn't have I didn't have a character. I didn't have an identity. I didn't have anything. And I'm like, I'm not going to not do it. Mm-hmm. I don't have a name. I don't know what, I had no idea what to expect at all. And this was 8:30 on a Sunday night, somewhere in there. And so, yeah, I fly out the next morning into Roanoke, and here I am walking onto a plane with Harlem Heat, Steiners, who don't know who else, but it's literally a charter type flight with all the boys on it. I haven't met any of these guys because they haven't been in Atlanta, you know, other than seeing them at you know, the couple shows I'd been to. So yeah, get to the arena and it's like Paige was wanting to do the Johnny Ringo from Wyatt Earp. Just as like, it's a name recognizer, man. Like, you know, they'll know the name and all that. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about the Johnny thing. Like, I just, you know, like I just wasn't envisioning this as my debut kind of deal. Because Pez had been trying to pitch, because Pez was a big fan of mine, and Terry Taylor was as well. And Pez was trying to push, because a lot of the guys thought I kind of had a Sting kind of thing, because I hadn't grown my hair out yet. I was in the middle of growing it out, but they were like, you kind of got a body shape kind of like that. And Pez was like, I want to, like, you should be like Sting's cousin or something like that. And he tried to push that. But Pez was very instrumental in getting me in front of like Arn Anderson and getting me a dart match at WCW, and he was big in my abilities, and so you know I was like thinking like something like that, not a Johnny Ringo off the cuff, you know. So Paige was like, well, let's just go with what do you think about Lance or something? I was like, okay, I don't care at this point, like. Yeah, so Lance, that's how the name came about. And then I'm there in my orange tights with my amateur wrestling shoes that I actually got hurt in because I had no boots. And it happened so fast, I didn't have time to get, you know, to borrow any kind of boots or anything. I don't know why I didn't go to Chris and go, dude, give me your boots or something. But because it's such a whirlwind kind of thing, you know, for me. And so that was the debut with the Lance Ringo, and that's what started that. Which is cool because Paige had just started. I think he was just really fresh in that macho angle. You know, because I think I walked out with Kimberly, her edition of Playboy. You know, and I think Macho after the match, you know, had words, you know, with Paige. I think that was the infancy of that angle.
Yeah, what a great angle that was. And you know, did you feel any you know, notwithstanding the whirlwind nature of it, did you feel any pressure coming out again in that high profile position? And then you had a match with Benoit on Nitro there soon after, according to my research. What was going through your mind when all this was happening, from Training Boom to you know, the hottest program in professional wrestling?
You know, when I walked out with the Lance Ringo thing, it was like, I mean, it's almost like football to a certain degree. I was always getting nervous before, but once I'm out there, it's like, you know, it just, I didn't pay attention to the cameras. I didn't pay attention to the crowd. I was just like, I'm confident in what I can do, you know, and I felt very comfortable. I felt like I was ready. I mean, you know, I've been working my ass off at the power plant, and Chris and all those guys believed in me. And I mean, if they didn't, they wouldn't have brought me in. You know, Paige wouldn't have brought me in. And so, you know, I felt confident with that. But I do remember after the match, Steve Regal going, if you're going to be professional, you need some boots. You need some real boots. And I was just like, yes, sir. I didn't, you know, I'm not going to go into detail and be like, bro, they called me last night. Like, I'm so green. I mean, I haven't done anything. I think I did a half-ass Royal Rumble that Pez set up that I won in like Winder, Georgia, or like Rome, Georgia kind of thing. But that was just so easy and kind of basic. But I don't know. It just felt very natural. It was like just really fit like a glove for me. And, you know, it was a good, solid match. And then from there, things were kind of quiet for a little while, just doing some training. And then, of course, Rave had signed, and he was looking for guys. And we were at the power plant, and Chris goes, "You will be perfect for Rave." Because Raven was looking for fresh guys nobody had seen. And so Chris pitched to Raven about putting me in the flock. And I don't know, I think it was like a couple months went by, something like that, before, we heard anything. I know it was like there was a party. Ray Glacier had like a get together at his house, and Kenyon was like, "Yeah, let's go. Paige is going to be there. Raven's going to be there." Just be an opportunity to really meet Raven, let him meet you, kind of thing. And went and did that. And at some point after that, I just remember, I can't remember. I think Chris told me, he goes, "Dude, you're in." They got it okayed. Like, it had to go up to Eric or the chain of command, and they said, "Yeah, you're in." And I want to say at that point, obviously we weren't doing anything together. We were going to debut in Universal Studio down in Florida, because we go down there to do TV tapings. And Rave had wanted to get everybody together to just kind of do some research, because at that time it was really just me, Perry, and I think Stevie was still there. I'm not sure. You may know better. I can't remember the time frame, because I don't remember when Stevie left, but I know he was there when I first, got into it. He might have had just left.
That's clear.
Yeah. And so we kind of did a little get together, and it was like me, Raven, Perry. I can't remember if Stevie was there. I think Kidman was there just because he was friends with Canyon and myself, and we were doing research, watching the movie Trainspotting. And so they had that grungy drug addict, kind of thing. And I remember just watching the movie, and Johnny Lee Miller, he played Sick Boy in the movie, and we're sitting there watching it, and just out of the blue, and this is how Raven is, because his mind is just, he's got a really unique wrestling mind. He goes, "Hey, Scott, you're Sick Boy. That's your name." I go, "Okay." I didn't get asked. What do you think? And I'm not going to, I'm like, I think I'm like 24 years old at the time, 24, 25. And I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'm Sick Boy." And that's how the name came about. And I want to say I found out I had a week to get a character kind of thing together before I had to be in Orlando Orlando at MGM. And so I just, I was like, well, I'm just kind of going to go with what the look is, and the grunge and the shorts. And, I kind of had my own, I tried to change it up a little bit. I was like, I'll do some t-shirts and, and maybe add some things. And so, yeah, that was that jump, and walked right into MGM Studios, into the flock. And I really didn't know. I mean, they didn't tell me a lot in terms of, what we were doing, where we were going. I mean, I had no idea about, really anything. It was just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to get there. We'll go with whatever they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like a whirlwind. A fan sent a question on social media, of course, talking about Raven in terms of, and you touched on it, man. Like, he's a legit Mensa level IQ, and has one of the most unique minds for the business. What did he offer you in terms of? Was there any advice, direction, aside from being, guess what, you're Sick Boy? Or did he allow you to just run with it yourself?
He really didn't give much direction. I think, other than, I think honestly, we were just kind of there to promote the whole flock mentality and to support Raven.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his gimmick. And, it's not like he really, like Canyon was more of a mentor to me in terms of just, I could go to Chris and go to a couple other guys like Brian Clark and ask some questions. Rave wasn't, it was like, he had to focus on what he was doing, which was getting his character over. And we were there to provide that. That's, it's like superheroes that have sidekicks. We were just all the sidekicks, because everybody kind of had their little place in the flock. Whereas like, I think, Perry was like the henchman enforcer guy, and of course Rave was Rave. And then they brought Kidman on not long right after, because he was at that MGM taping. But I think right after they confirmed me, they got Kidman in there, like right behind me, like, but obviously before we got to MGM. And, Kidman was eventually like, he was the high flyer, obviously. And that was kind of the component. I really didn't know. No one said, you got to be this, you got to be that, you got to do, it wasn't that. It was literally like, here you go. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I guess I'll follow suit with what Raven's doing, And the only thing that worked well in my favor at first with that was when we got there, they said, look, guys, we're doing these tapings. They're not going to, because we would do, I don't know what it was, like 6 shows a day or 8 shows a day. We did like 3 in the morning and like 3 in the afternoon. And they said, and we did that like, for a week. Or like, I think it was not quite a week, but like 5 days of taping at MGM. And they were like, you're not gonna have a match. You're just gonna go sit ringside. Like, I think Rave had some stuff, maybe Perry had some stuff, and sit ringside. So I was like, okay, so I'm just gonna do what everybody else is doing, So we got through the whole MGM deal and got up to like the very last day. And, I was the good boy the whole time. Everybody was going out every night. And I was like, I'm not going out. I'm like, we go out to dinner and stuff like that. But I was like, I'm not going and partying or doing anything. And so it was like the last night there, it was like, of course, everybody was going out. And they're like, you got to go. And of course, I'm like, yeah, I'm going out last night. I'm not worried about working or anything like that. It's last night. One of the biggest mistakes of my career. I partied like it was 1999. And it was awesome. Everybody was out, and I got home, I don't know, at 3 or 4 in the morning, and I called a buddy of mine, and he tells me most of the details about what we talked about, but I just remember waking up in the kitchen floor of my condo that I was renting down there, in my clothes, in the chair I was in with the phone in my hand. My alarm had gone off, and I had like 20 minutes to get to MGM Studios.
Boy.
And I get there, and as I'm walking in, Terry Taylor comes up, and he's like, "Oh, kid, did you just roll in out of the club?" And I was like, "Yeah," because to be honest, I think I was still a little buzzing. I felt horrible. And he said, "Well, you're gonna have to pull it together, man. You're on this first show, and you got a match with Pat Tanaka." I was like, "You gotta be kidding me." And so, yeah, I had that match with Pat, and which if I had to have it with anybody, the perfect person to work with.
Absolutely.
Just a really great worker. And I just told him, and he knew. I said, I may get sick, man. He goes, "Well, if you do, just give me the Iggy. I'll throw you out of the ring." And I think I took a move from him or something, a backdrop or a hip toss, and I felt my stomach go up into my throat, and I was like, throw me out. And he threw me out, and I went up under the ring and got sick. And then rolled back in and finished the match.
That's something that you don't forget being
no. And what's crazy is I've never seen that match. I don't even know if they aired it. I have no idea. But I've never seen it. But yeah, fortunately that was the only match I had with that. But going back to the question about just that deal with Raven, and did he give you any advice? There really wasn't. The only advice I got came that next that Monday, because we went to Tampa for Nitro, and I got summoned by Paige to meet him up in the seats of the arena. And I go up there, and it's DDP and Eric Bischoff. And I'm thinking, man, I've already like messed up, like I'm getting fired already or something, you know? And walk up there, and they start talking. I can't remember who said what, but basically it was Bischoff going, look, you need to come up with something and be different than the rest of the guys, because if you don't, as quickly as you got here, you can be gone just as quick. And that was that. And I was like, and that was literally the only direction I got for the character. And so for the rest of the day, I'm like, I've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours to figure something out. What can I do? And at that time I was just like, well, let's see, it's Sick Boy. Maybe I'll just, and I didn't have a match. So I was like, I needed to, and I'm like, I don't know why I'm getting picked out of the crew, because Raven sat in a seat, because we were sitting ringside at the time, and Raven sat in a seat, Perry sat in a seat, Kidman sat in a seat. And I don't know if they had the conversation with Kidman, but that was my conversation. So I just said, you know what? I'm going to sit on the floor. That'll be different. And I'll just kind of sit there in the guardrail, and I'll put my legs through the guardrail, and I'll just that's where I kind of really started thinking. I said, maybe I'll do like a little mixture of like kind of a Cactus Jack, Mankindy kind of thing, but not quite to that degree, because obviously I'm not going to work like Mick. But I was like, maybe I'll do like I'm hearing voices, and that's where I started thinking, like, if I walk out to my entrance, I can, because a lot of times I would just kind of turn and spin and look up to the rafters and move my mouth, and like somebody was talking to me, bite the rope in the ring, and just kind of, and like I said, I mean, I was just really green. I didn't get to work territories. There were no territories like guys had back in the day where you could go really finesse a character. It was such a pressure of TV, because it's like, it's live, you're going, and it's just, you're thrusting it so quick. The only thing that saved me was just my ability that I could work. And, but you still have to have that. You still have to have a charisma. You still have to bring something to the table. And it was like, I was just kind of starting to get there with it, and go, okay, this is going to be the start of it. So I just kind of did it all on my own, honestly, other than just them telling me, hey, you can be fired as fast as you were hired if you don't do something different than the rest of the guys. That was my motivation.
Well, that's definitely the proverbial gun to your head. Trevor is asking, is there anyone in the flock that you didn't like working with?
In terms of a match, or just part of the flock?
I guess just how about both?
I later on worked. I think I worked Perry after the flock split up in matches. I'd worked Riggs on house shows, and I worked Hammer in one match. Perry, I loved working with because he was a little snug. I like snug in my work. I'm working with somebody. Riggs was just, it was like a dance. It was easy. He's such a good worker, so smooth. That was great. Honestly, everybody got along in the flock. there really wasn't. Everybody really, I mean, we hung out together. A lot of us, some hung out more than others. Like me and Scotty became good friends, and we did stuff like we played golf in our off time, and we lived 20 minutes from each other in Atlanta, and we hung out and traveled together. Same thing with Lodi. When Lodi got into the flock, we traveled a lot together. At times, I don't know if nobody I didn't get along with. There really wasn't. And then when Horace came in, and Ron, of course, I already knew Ron. The only real gripe I would have would be with Hammer, and it was his first night in the flock, and we were in Florida, and Hammer had left. I don't know if he got fired or what, when he was doing the whole heavy metal Van Hammer thing, but he was good friends with Paige, and Paige got him back in and got him into the flock. And Hammer was supposed to be on the straight and narrow. Like, he can't mess up, can't do anything wrong. He's got to be good boy. And we get done with our segment, and we're in the back, and Hammer is like passed out on one of the training tables and just kind of out of it. And I don't know what he got into, but he was not feeling good. And so we were staying in the same hotel, which was I think 40 minutes away from the arena. And of course, Raven and everybody's freaking out, and they go get Paige, and we're trying to wake Hammer up. He won't wake up, throwing water on him, slapping him. He's just he wasn't in danger health wise, but he was just very not responsive and kind of, and Paige goes, "You got to get him out of here. Like, if Eric sees him like this, he's fired. He's done. You got to get him out of here." And I just remember I said, "Well, we're at the same hotel, so he can ride. I'll take him right now." And took him back, drive back 40 minutes. He's just almost basically sleeping the whole time there. I get back to the hotel. He's not very functional. And I'm like, Hammer's 270 or something, big guy. And I can't get him out of the car. And finally, he kind of starts to a little bit, but very groggy. And I just remember I got him out and got his arm up over him and getting him up. And this was a old school hotel. We had the stairs, that led up, to the different levels. And I'm having to carry this big dude up these stairs. And I'm starting to get kind of hot, because I'm like, I didn't, why am I the babysitter on this thing? And I'm having to literally I was blown up trying to get him up the stairs. And then all of a sudden he kind of started getting real lax again, where he was dead weight. And I'm trying to get his room key. He was trying to remember what room he was in, and finally get him in there, man. And I just opened the door and I literally grabbed him by the back of the pants and threw him in the room. I got that mad at him and chunked him in there and just closed the door, went to my room. And I want to say about 2 or 3 hours later, I get this at the door, and I open his Hammer, and he's sitting there, and he's just got this puppy dog look on his face. And he's like, "Man, I'm so sorry." And he just comes in and gives me this big hug and he's patting me on the back. He goes, "Thank you so much. I just, I took some muscle relaxers or something. My back, something was bothering me. I don't know, something was up like that. And it just really hit me, and he goes, and he just was like, Hammer's such a good guy. I mean, but it was a little funny story where it was that was our first interaction, almost like the reverse of what Sarge was, with me. And, that was Hammer. But other than that, I mean, we really had no issues in the flock on what we were doing, and everybody kind of knew their place and what we were supposed to do there,
Mm-hmm.
So
did aside from not giving you a lot of advice, and even though it was clear that you're to support him, a fan is asking about the famous comment that Stevie Richards made about Raven saying something to him during his time as his quote unquote lackey, that you're my 75 grand a year job boy. Was he ever standoffish like that with you?
No. Raven, I got along great. We didn't hang out a lot outside, of work, but I mean, we got along great, work wise, but um, I never experienced anything like that. And I don't know. I know he and Stevie had some. I try not to get into a lot of the backstage drama stuff. I hear things, and people tell me. I'm not one going, "Hey, what's going on with so and so and this?" I just kind of always stayed out of it. I've always kind of been a kind of a lone wolf guy, just in terms of I just came in, wanted to do my work and do my stuff, and um, if you hear stuff, obviously you're on the road. I spent more time with these guys than my family, which everybody talks, kind of the same thing. So you naturally are going to hear things. I just don't dig too deep in it. It's like almost what I hear. But I knew there was some stuff with them, and I don't know the whole story with it. But no, I never got treated like that.
Your tenure was during a real high water mark in the business in WCW. WCW was doing, turning a profit for the first time ever. These huge monster TV ratings, that whole Monday Night War dynamic that was so prevalent and inspiring, so much good stuff on TV, including the Flock. What do you remember in terms of the company? The atmosphere in the company during those highs, and then you were still in the company when things started to go south a little bit too. Do you remember it being? We hear a lot about it being chaotic, disorganized. Do you remember it being a stressful environment backstage?
I don't know. Yeah, I knew it was there. I mean, WCW was at times a lot. I'll say this. Let me start with this. At first, it was so hot, nothing mattered. I mean, it just, the NWO was just something wrestling's never seen. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, we would go do a house show at the Palace in Detroit and sell it out. I mean, actually, me and Kidman tagged against Page and Benoit at the Palace in Detroit, and that place was sold out. Which, for a house show, house shows are a lot of times were smaller venues, but it was so hot. I mean, I think we were the #1 show on cable. Both shows. I think Nitro might have been 1, maybe Thunder was 2, but we were like up there competing, and we were drawing huge numbers. So it was just the gimmick with NWO and Hogan. I mean, Hogan turning heel and Hall and Nash. I don't have to repeat it. Everybody knows it. It was just huge. So it was like this big, just this big like Kahuna wave we're riding on. And at that point, it was just, it was amazing. And I want to say, I think when they started kind of splitting stuff and doing the Wolf Pack, it was still really hot. But I think it kind of started at that point. There was some rips in the fabric, and I think the whole novelty of the NWO started kind of wearing. Like, where are we going to go from here? And now you get down, and now this is just my humble opinion. But I think at that point now it comes down to creative and writing, and it's like, where are we going to go from here? And I don't think they had an answer for it. And it would be a hard question to answer, but just because of NWO and how big it was and how hot it was, okay, how are we going to maintain this? And I don't think they did a good job at developing any under talent at that time,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that whole thing was, we were riding high on that. And then of course, I think it was a simultaneous decline where I think we were looking at, that's when we were really looking at splitting the flock. That's where they told us, we're going to break the flock up. To this day, I have no idea why. Cause I mean, we were hot.
Yeah.
I thought it was, yeah. And I'm not saying this because I was in it. I mean, I'm a realist. I mean, I call things as they are, and I just call a spade, ace, whatever. And I was like, I tell you, we were lucky we were on there, honestly, because it really wasn't that good. But no, we were good. And I mean, any place we went, I mean, we had huge heat. I mean, I had water bottles thrown at me. Not me, all of us did. Batteries, rolls of quarters. I got tobacco juice spit on me. I mean, it was a high, we would come in that corridor at the match and the whole arena would turn around and start just booing us. I don't know why they didn't run with it more. Like, I think they were just so infatuated with pushing the NWO part of it that they were like, nah, it doesn't matter. Now, again, this is my humble opinion. I could be completely wrong, but it's just my perception and kind of what I saw in it. And I'm like going, I don't get this. There was just a lot of things I didn't get at the time, so, we kind of started to water down and they go, we're going to split you. And I was like, we had a good run. We had some good angles. We were in with Goldberg and Benoit and different stuff. And so, yeah, it was kind of a shock, honestly. And then once that really started going down, I was like, I kind of started seeing early, like, this ship is sinking, man. Mm-hmm. And where I really started to notice it was when they finally, I think I think Perry and Raven had a pay-per-view match that the winner gets the flock or something, or if Perry wins, the flock falls apart or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All I knew from that, they said, hey, look, when this happens, you're off TV like 90 days. We're going to revamp you, do a whole nother character. So I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. Cause I wanted to get into just normal wrestling, I want to get into normal wrestling gear and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's cool. That'd be a good transition. Now I'm back in this dilemma of what do I do character wise? I can't really continue, I don't want to continue with the sick boy thing. I want something new and fresh, which again, kind of going back to earlier, what we talked about, just what did they give you in terms of the sick boy? I tried something. I don't know if you remember, it was the one and done. I came out in a suit. Mm-hmm. And like not a true suit, but like had a dress shirt and like a dress jacket on. And, it was part of that, the evolution, I thought, of sick boy. And I said, you know what? I want to do I went to rave, and this is probably the only advice he really gave me. And it actually turned out not to be good advice. I said, hey man, I want to add to the gimmick. And I said, I want to do like this multi-personality guy, was it Sybil? Sally Field, I think, did like that, a character that had multiple personalities.
Yeah.
Sybil. Sybil. I go, I wanted to kind of do something like that, like have this multi-personality for Sick Boy. I said, maybe one day I'll wrestle in normal like boots and trunks, and I'll think like I'm a businessman or something, or like be a whole different personality. And so I was like, I'll start in slow and kind of let's pull the hair back like it is now and like look slick and look good. I'll put on a jacket, and Ray was like, yeah, that's awesome, man. Do it. Like, I love that idea. That's a really good idea. And so I did it on a Thunder. And again, this is just me being green and talking about the advice of Raven. He didn't smart me up and go, well, you should clear it with the office first, which I just didn't know. And so I'm thinking Raven is the guy that is checking there. I've gone through for everything. So I do the suit gimmick and go out there. And I remember coming back to the back and guys were like, man, they're so hot with you right now. Like, and I remember Terry Taylor coming up and yelling at me, like just screaming, like, you didn't tell anybody this was going to happen. We had no idea. Like guys were going, yeah, they were screaming, going, get the cameras off of him. Like they had and I had no idea, I didn't think, I just didn't know the procedures. I didn't know that I should have gone and asked and said, hey, I want to do this with my gimmick. I thought if Raven said it was good, it was good. And he would take care of, anything with it. I think that's just some of my naivety in it, And so that was the end of that. And it wasn't long after that where they kind of started to disband and where I kind of started to go, I don't know how much I'm going to push this character now anymore. Like I couldn't really get into it and go, I want to develop this further. I'm not going to now because it's going to be over. And that led to the split. And so now I'm back at ground zero again going, hey, what am I going to come up with now? And so I was at home and I had 90 days and I came up and I said, I want to do like a new breed athlete kind of guy. I want to do like a new age kind of thing. I love like the colors black and silver. And I was like, I'll do all my gear black and silver. I want to do like silver hair. I was a big fan of the Raiders, the football team. So I always loved the colors and stuff. And I'd actually worked out for them. So I had a little vested interest there as well. And I said, I'll do the hair silver and beard and stuff black. And I want to be this guy that's this hybrid guy that can do all the high flying stuff, but is also big enough to do power. Because, I wasn't like a true power guy, but I wasn't like a true high flyer either. But I could do all the high flying, I could do a lot of it. And I was like, I really want to, that's the direction I want to go in. And that started that, and that got weird because 90 days turned into like 6 months. I was off TV. And that didn't start out well because, like I said, I asked at the end of that, I said, hey guys, I'm off TV now, right? Like I'm not, fault this. I think we did that Monday after the pay-per-view was the last Nitro I did, and I asked and said, hey, we're off TV. I'm done. And they said, yeah, you're off TV. And so the following Monday, I'm at home and I'm getting a phone call from DDP going, hey, it's like 2:00 in the afternoon. He goes, where are you at? And I'm like, I'm at home. And he goes, we got a match tonight on Nitro. Why aren't you here? And I'm like, because they told me I was done. I was off TV and I wasn't coming the following week. And he was like, I mean, and that's where I kind of started like, okay, here's starting to come some of this disorganization part of it, especially in, and then that leading into the 90 days turning into 6 months. Like during that period, I had gotten the gimmick okayed and they were changing stuff at that time. Like I think Kevin Nash had started booking, had taken over from Kevin Sullivan. And they wanted to start doing like Saturday night for the younger talent and to promote the younger talent on like Saturday night shows. And Jimmy Hart was supposed to kind of be the headhunter for that, like the lead guy on it, and using Saturday night to promote young guys and just saving, for the vets and stuff, doing, the bigger shows. And then eventually work, kind of get, guys up from there. And they would fly me out and we get there and they're like, oh, we're going to do a vignette with you. And then they wouldn't do it. Oh, we don't have time. Shows, we're running behind, this, that, and the other. And this happened quite a few times. And eventually I just started kind of getting a little like, disheartened with it. I kept working out. I stayed in shape. I did all that. But I was just like, I'm not going to keep dyeing my hair, because I had to dye it platinum blonde and then get silver put in there. And the silver would only last for like 2 or 3 weeks. and I'd have to go back, and I was going back all the time. I'm like, I'm going to a hair salon more than my wife, or more than women go to and stuff. And I was like, I'm just not going to do it. If, we're not going to do this character, or, it seemed like, so, I just, been at home, and then then they booked me in a match with, I'm sorry. I did a Saturday night taping with, with one of the luchador guys.
Oh, yes. Not Lismark, was it?
No, I was still sick boy with Lismark. It was, he did the backwards hat. He wore the mask that looked like a backwards hat with sunglasses. Super Callow. Yeah, I did that. I think that was my first match with the blonde hair and the new look. And, at that point, I was still kind of like, okay, that there's something here, maybe this is the start of this character, maybe moving forward. And then after that, it kind of went dead again. And then my next match, it was a Thunder with a live Thunder against Rick Fuller.
Yeah, and a fan is asking about that, saying he called in to WCW Live that night to question why they'd bring back Sick Boy and job him to Fuller, who was a good worker, but known by then as an enhancement talent.
Well, here's a good answer for it. It's what was told to me. I got there and found out that I was in a match, and I was that Rick was going over, and I don't have a problem with that stuff. I'm like, I get paid the same. Obviously, you want to move up the card, and if you win, it's better for you, this and the other. But if it makes sense to me, and I was like, where are we going? Because I'd been off for 6 months, other than the Super Callow match, and Rick had torn his bicep. And I think he had been out for like 8 months. So this was his first Thunder back. And like I said, Jimmy Hart was in charge of a lot of the younger talent. So he was kind of going like, hey, here's the match. This is what you're doing, and he goes, I don't understand this either. And I was like, I don't. And he goes, well, go talk to Kevin Nash and just ask him like, hey, is this like a one and done, or are they going to do a program, with you? Like with Rick Fuller. And I was like, you think I should, And he goes, yeah, absolutely. Go. It doesn't hurt to go ask. So I went in and asked Kev, and I remember very vividly him sitting there lacing up his boots, and he really didn't even look up at me. And nothing against Kevin. Kevin and I, the interactions we had, they were all good with Kevin. We didn't have a lot, but I never had any, never anything a bad experience with him or anything. But I just remember he really didn't look up at me, and I just said, hey, I'm just, Jimmy and I were talking, and with this match, I go, I've been off, Rick's been off, and are we doing anything after, are we going to run a program or do something with this match? And he said, no. He goes, he's going over because when you come out, they're going to expect you to win. And I go, okay, thanks. And again, now I'm really like going, I see where this whole, I'm like, that I couldn't accept, like, that just didn't make sense to me, and I'm like, I don't know if I'd done something. I don't know what the deal was. I don't know where things were with the company at that time, but I was like, Kevin's got to be better than that. Like, is this, it's just that simple? We're just going to throw people in matches to throw them in matches? Because it did nothing for either one of us. And that goes to the question. Like, why put two guys in that have been off? What's the advantage of that for either person? It wasn't losing to Rick. Rick was a good guy, awesome worker. They should have done more with Rick. They probably could have. I like Rick a lot, but it just didn't make sense. Now it makes sense, like I said, if we were going to do something down the road. So I was just like, okay, at that point now I need to try to protect myself somehow. So I said, you know what? I went to Mike Tenay and I think was Heenan still announcing at that time?
Yes.
So Heenan, Shivani, I went to those guys and especially Mike, and I said, hey, just convey. I said, I know this Fox split up. I said, but during my matches, I said, I'm going to be kind of, if you don't mind, you want to on my matches. I so I'm going to start acting kind of lost. Like, my original plans for the character being this new breed, power, high flying guy. I go, that's out the window now. Like, I'm not going to mess with that. And I said, so let's just play this as like, and I think, I wanted to play it as the Fox split up and I don't know what to do. Because I was looking at everybody else and, Kidman was getting a good little run and everybody was kind of doing their thing. And I said, well, I want to go complete opposite. They're trying to embrace it and make something more out of it. I said, I'm going to play off the fact that I'm lost without the flock. And I just want to kind of be, and I said, and then that will protect me from, having a bad match or just like, having, something like that with Rick or anybody else. And so I went and told them that. And then I think I only had 2 more matches after that. And it was Rick Steiner and Scott Steiner, with the blonde hair. And those are just, junk too. Other than those guys were great. I just wanted to take Steiner lines. I was like, I don't care, whatever we do. I just want to take the Steiner line, and where the kind of final nail in the coffin went in was that Rick Steiner match, because the office said, don't get any offense on him. Let him eat you up. And they were wanting to push him with Goldberg. That was the, at the time, I don't know how far they went with that. I can't remember. I don't think it got a lot of attraction. It kind of went more, it went more Big Papa Pump, but it didn't gain much traction. But that was the reasoning behind it. And I know they were legitimately wanting to. At first, Rick was going to be the guy to take on Goldberg. And so I get building them up, and it was really cool with Rick, because I went to him and said, hey man, the match, they just want full offense from you and don't do anything. And he goes like, F that, man. Like, that doesn't do anything for me. It does nothing for you. And Rick and I we weren't like friends, but we got along. And I had gone through a little thing with that whole group, because when I first came in, I know it's kind of jumping back, but I had heat with all these guys when I first came in, with a lot of big guys, the Steiners, Sting, Bagwell, Lex, and I had no idea, because I was friends with Scott Norton and Brian Clark. Not Brian, Brian Clark, but Brian Adams, because Brian Adams and Scott were friends, and I met Brian Adams through Scott Norton, and like Scott Norton, our wives were friends, so we hung outside of the business and golfed and hung out and did stuff, and I was traveling with him, and they were all like, "Just why are you traveling with this green kid? Who is he? How does he get in here? Like, how did he get in the spot he's in? Has he got money? Has he got influence?" That's what I was hearing from Norton and these guys. That all, and I was pretty quiet, Like I said, I didn't know the whole the procedures you went through and meet. I would say hey to everybody, but I just kind of was quiet, kept to myself, because it was like a humbling experience, and I didn't want to ruffle feathers. And I'm just like, I'm gonna, but yeah, I ended up having heat with all those guys, and it wasn't until I traveled with Lex for like a week, and we talked, and we had a football connection, and talked, and then he had talked to those guys, and we were staying in a hotel room. I remember I walked in, and it was really intimidating, because there was Rick and Scott Steiner, Riggs, Bagwell, Sting, and of course Lex. And that's when they, I think it was Sting saying like, yeah, we had heat. We didn't know what you were about. You were just, quiet and this and that. But Lex said you were a really good guy, really cool and all that. And after that, like everything was really cool, was really cool. And like I said, we didn't hang out a ton, it didn't, like I did with Norton and some other guys, but it was a different thing. I felt the atmosphere felt different at the time. So maybe that helped with the match with Rick and even with Scott, because Scott was really cool in the match that we had. And I enjoyed both of them. And those were the last matches I did with WCW.
Mm. Yeah. What could have been? So you're done with WCW. Sounds like a good thing, because it certainly went downhill from there. And then you ended up working something out with WWE that you had this this good relationship with. How did that come together to make the segue?
Like I said, I saw where this was going. Like the writing was on the wall with WCW, and I reached out to Terry Taylor, who had left WCW and was with WWE. And I said, listen, if I'm not with WCW anymore, would I have a job there? And I know Bruce had said, hey, you always have a place here if you want to, and it's ironic because I think it was like 3 years, maybe two and a half, maybe something, 2 years since, he told us that. And Terry goes, yeah, you'll have a place here. Plus I had heard from Lodi, who, like I said, Lodi and I were good friends and we traveled together. Lodi was friends with Matt and Jeff Hardy, and the Hardys had told Lodi that Jim Ross really liked my work and was like impressed with me. And so that was like kind of like a little feather in the cap going, okay, well, there's that. And then of course, Terry was a fan of mine. He pushed, to get me, like he pushed I was supposed to work Marty Jannetty. It was actually at the show where Degeneration X showed up at Norfolk at the Scope.
Yeah. The Scope.
I was supposed to work Jannetty, and they had me going over, and that was from Terry. But Kevin Sullivan, I think, 86'd it because I don't know. There was some, from what I gathered. Again, like I said, I didn't dive deep into all the backstage politics and junk, but that match got stripped, and I think it had something to do with Kevin didn't really like Page or something like that, and I was a Page guy, a DDP guy, and so but Terry wanted that, and Terry got me when I worked Mark Starr, I went over on Nitro against Mark Starr. That was Terry. Terry, like when I worked Goldberg, Terry goes, hey, you're going to get the first cover, not a pin, but a first 1-2 cover on Bill. And it was the match where we were in Philly, and it was unfortunate because he loved my springboard stuff, and he said, I want you to hit him with that springboard drop kick and cover him, because nobody had covered. I don't think at that point, if I remember correctly, no one had really covered Bill. And he goes, hit that springboard and cover Bill for like a 1-2 count. And, all the guys put on oil and stuff, and the top of the ropes were really slippery, and I slipped and I busted. I completely just botched the spot and didn't even hit Bill. So didn't get to do that, but that was all Terry. So Terry was really like, and I was like, this is a big deal, and so I knew Terry, so I felt confident Terry kind of had my back and whatnot. So, and then hearing that from Lodi about what Jim Ross had said. So that was the into WWF. And then they flew me up to, I got released, and I went to JJ and I said, I don't want to do the 90 days. Because, at that time in that, once you were done, you couldn't work anywhere for 3 months. And I was like, please release me from that. Like, I went to the offices and said, just, please do that. And for whatever reason, he did. So I didn't have to wait the 90 days. So immediately I called Terry back and was like, hey, bro, I'm good to go. I'm done. I'm finished. No 90 days. And they flew me up. And I didn't meet with Vince at that time. I met with Bruce Pritchard again and JR. And it was really just a negotiation of the contract at that time. We really didn't talk much about what we were going to do. They didn't say, hey, we want you to be this or that. It was really just, working out the details of the contract. And, at the time, so, we got that done. And then I flew up later and met with Vince, and then went through like a series of like interviews. And it was the first time I met Batista, because David just signed, and he showed up at the TV studio, because it was just a big warehouse with the TV studio in it, and they had a ring in there, and he had just signed. And I had been over there doing interviews, because they were just doing interviews, like personal interviews, like, what's your favorite ice cream? If you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be and why? And all this different stuff. And just kind of getting a grip on you and who you are as a person. And like I said, met with Vince. And again, we really didn't talk any character stuff or anything. It was like, great, we'll get back with you. I think this was like October. And there were some talks back and forth. And I didn't start doing any dart matches with them until like that spring, like March. And then they were talking about wanting to bring me in to tag me with Val Venus, to be like his understudy that kind of ran him out of the porn industry. And, he went to wrestling, and now I follow him into wrestling. And they're like, yeah, I think, we want you to like show up at like Raw with a bunch of girls ringside. And, they didn't give a lot of specifics, but they were like, kind of, here's the gist of it, very generic outline, and said, this is how we'll bring you in, and you guys will tag, and then you'll turn on him and go, solo. And that was the initial. And then of course, his character was getting a lot of blowback from advertising, and, they were doing some pretty on the fringe stuff with him, which I didn't know at the time, but then I'd eventually be involved in later with probably the most infamous story line in wrestling. But, because they simulated that castration thing with him. You remember that with the Japanese guys, and I think that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. And that's when they put him in right to censor. And now I'm like, well, what are you going to do with me? So I kind of got put on the back burner. I was just doing dart matches, and that was pretty much it. And it was kind of quiet for quite a while with that, because every other thing they would come up with, they go to Vince, and Vince would go, I don't want to do that with him. Like, I don't see that working with him. I think that was like creative, and a lot of the writers, because I know one thing they talked about doing, they want to do like a Matrix gimmick with me. With the Keanu Reeves, I can't remember his name in the movie, the character.
Yeah.
But it was that kind of idea with the hair and the glasses and the black trench coat kind of thing. And they wanted to do, like, they were looking at doing different, like, they're like, hey, it would be cool to do like an intro where we do, like, how Matrix was kind of shot, that 360-degree thing. Yes. They wanted to do that, like, coming out.
Oh wow, some good.
And kind of have that whole move. And I'm already starting to think like, oh man, we kind of start doing. That could be kind of cool. You work with this in a bunch of different ways, and for whatever reason, I don't even know why that didn't fly. But Vince kind of shot down a few things at that point. Early on. and that just fell through. And then I just did dark matches.
And we've received a lot of fan questions leading up to this interview. You just touched on it there. Can you put to rest the I guess the urban legend surrounding the Katie Vick storyline and your involvement in it? Because a lot of folks are talking about that to this day, given the, as you said, probably the most infamous storyline ever.
I was actually done with WWF or WWE at the time. Like I said, we'd gone through a bunch of different things, and they had one of the last things that they wanted to do. They wanted to put me and Big Boss Man together and do a gimmick as a protection, like Secret Service for Vince. And that kind of fell through. And so then they bought WCW, and things really started. I started just going. A lot of the reasons I wanted to get out of WCW came back to WWE. So it was at this point now. I'm out. And they just were kind of messing around with me, like, going to bring me back. Like, they tagged me with O'Hare, with Sean, which was crazy because, like I said, we went to high school and they were toying with wanting to tag us. Like, actually, it was Johnny Ace, and he goes, "We want to put you on house shows," and that never happened. And so it was just a bunch of things going on. And now and I had stuff going on in my personal life that I was just dealing with, and I had a business that I had started years back, and so I just kind of gotten kind of a sour taste in my mouth for the business. And so after just all this letdown of going, "Oh, we're going to bring you back," and it was up and down almost up until that was for a while, and eventually I was just like, you know what? I've just been training and working out so long that I'm just gonna take it easy, and I haven't been doing anything. And it was almost a year before they called me again. I was out to dinner on a Sunday night, and Howard Finkel called me and said, "Hey, can you be in Toronto tomorrow for Raw?" And the only thing I could think of was maybe the Katie Vick. But also I kind of heard rumors of doing bringing the flock back together, because Raven was there, Kidman was there, Saturn was there. And I was like, maybe it's that. But I didn't know for sure. But I thought I was awful. It weirded me out going, because I didn't watch wrestling a lot. I would peep in every now and then and see what was going on. And I'm like, why are they using my last name for this storyline? I was like, that's so weird, And so I get the call, go up to Canada and get there, and go to Rave, and of course, like, "Hey man," he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know, they just flew me in." And I go, "I think something with the flock," and found out it wasn't that. And then they come up to me and they go, "Hey, we want you to be the brother to Katie Vick." And I'm like, okay, well, shouldn't I have known this however many months ago? Like, I don't know how long that storyline had been going on, or should I have heard something from you or something. I've heard nothing from you guys at all. And I mean, I full disclosure, I was out of shape. I was like, I hadn't been working out. I hadn't done anything, just because I hadn't heard from them. And I thought, okay, last I heard we were going to do house shows, and then Johnny Ace went and returned my calls, and he took over JR's spot at VP of Talent Relations. And so I just never heard from him anymore. And I go, well, I guess this is dead, with them. And so I was stunned by it, and they wanted me to cut a promo. And the only thing they really told me at that time was, "Hey, we want you to cut a promo. You're going to be in a pay-per-view." I think the pay-per-view that Kane and Hunter worked in with that storyline, you're going to run in, and and that's really all they told me. I was going to interfere somehow. And I think initially it was with Kane, because my promo that they had me cut was about Kane taking it like, Katie Vick was my sister, and in high school, Kane was the only she had befriended Kane, and she was the only one, because he was a monster, and he was burnt and disfigured, and she was the only one in high school that had befriended him and was his friend and was a good friend and this, that, and the other. And they said it was all kind of like Chappaquidda. Like there's this mysterious accident and nobody knows kind of what happened, but it was like the question in this is, did he take an advantage of her while she was alive or dead? And I know the thing that she did, and my anger and my revenge was the fact that she was his friend and he did that to her. And so that whole promo was kind of cut at Kane, and I'm assuming the run-in would have had something to do with with Kane at that point. And so shot that promo and did a dart match that night. And then went to Nashville the following week, and then they it was that week or a week later they said, yeah, we're not going to move forward with this storyline. It's just, and I mean, I'm reading the sheets and stuff. I'm seeing what's going on. I mean, people were just, it was bad. I knew it was bad before. I didn't have to read anything. I just looking at it going, this is bad. Like, this is just, it was horrible. And I already knew it. But I was like, my gosh, if this is my springboard back in, great. And so they ended it. And it was just a bad, a really bad gimmick, or not gimmick, but storyline angle. It's terrible.
Still talked about to this day as a consequence, for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, then years later, I read an article with Tommy Dreamer, and he was part of, I guess, the creative team, and he had said in his version, because I had heard Bruce Prichard's version, which was, well, we ended that storyline because Scott came in and did a dart match and didn't look good, was out of shape or something, and we didn't feel like he could uphold his end. And I'm like, nah, that's not 100% true. They failed to mention I had no contact with him for almost a year. It was true. I wasn't in the best of shape. I had ring rust because I hadn't done anything with wrestling. I mean, I wasn't even really working out, so I wasn't in the best of shape on any level. But that wasn't the reason. I mean, come on. Everybody knows the reason they ended that was, same thing with Val Venus. They were catching a lot of shit from, sponsors. And it was just bad. And that's really why they ended, because I could have gotten in shape, especially when I read what Tommy Dreamer in that interview where he goes, yeah, the idea of that storyline was to bring Scott in and debut him. Vince wanted to, debut him. They couldn't use the name Sick Boy, but I think at that time they had actually bought WCW, so they actually could have used the name. I think Tommy Dreamer said, like, Vince wasn't aware that I wasn't with the company anymore, which is kind of baffling to me because Vince kind of knows everything. And he said, yeah, so they wanted to bring me in as the brother and then have at WrestleMania me wrestle Hunter. And I'm reading that, I'm going, how was I not notified on any of that? Like, if you're going to do that, because I guarantee give me a couple weeks, I'm going to be in shape. Give me a month, I'll get in shape. WrestleMania with Hunter? Are you kidding me? And yeah, so it was just, I don't know. It was that was just so bizarre to me. But that was my version of it, and that's from my side, how the office presented it to me, and then hearing Tommy's interview and reading what he said, I was stunned by that. I never knew that part of it. And I thought, man, that's if that's the case, that's kind of because they were so professional and always on top of everything. I guess it was just a last minute thing. Let's throw them in there. But I'm like, come on, WrestleMania, that's like this is as big as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe give somebody a heads up. So I don't know if somebody sabotaged it or or what, but it just didn't make sense to me that no one would have been like, hey, let's debut him this way. Maybe we need to give him some heads up. He's not here. Let's find out what he's doing. And but yeah, that's the Katie Vick.
Give him a few weeks at least. My broadcast partner on Riders Wrestling Review every week, the news that we find interesting, is asking, how great was it working with JR Ryder and Fonte?
Good. I mean, it was from what I remember that match, that was a good match. I think it was a pretty solid match. He was there on every. I don't know what his take would be in that match, but he was there on everything. It was pretty smooth. We had a solid. I think we had a very solid match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was there for quite a while and in a good spot, and definitely one that I haven't seen the match exactly, but it probably was a damn good one. In terms of your stepping away from the business, was that just kind of the I don't want to say the straw that broke the camel's back, but you said you got a sour taste in it, and you had your own business on the outside, and you were you'd already done a lot. Was it just a case of as some people get, I've had enough of all the wrestling drama deals?
That was part of it. Plus I my first child was being born, or was on the way, getting ready to be born. And I just got kind of I again really disheartened with it, because out of nowhere, I thought I was in a good place, because as much attention I was getting from Vince, with wanting to, they were bringing stuff to him, and things just kind of fell through. And then I felt like it really fell through the cracks when they bought WCW. With things. And of course, like I said, I had other things going on in my life, just not professionally, but personally with my family, and trying to deal with family stuff. So I know I wasn't always where I always needed to be with it, but it just kind of culminated in getting to that point where I'm like, okay, I've tried everything I can do. I keep trying to reach out, and they're telling me, hey, we want to we want to do this with you. We want to, and then they would draw me out, and I wouldn't hear anything. And then, hey, have a match against John Cena, which I had a dark match. I think it was my last match with WWF or WWE.
When he was Prototype, correct?
Yeah, but he did it. He went under the name Cena. Yeah, he did. He came out as John. And we did that match, and I wasn't in the best shape there either, because I just hadn't heard from him. I was definitely in better shape than I was in the for the Katie Vick thing. But yeah, after all that, it was just, like I said, it was a build up for me. And I was like, you know what? It's disappointing. I wish I could have done more. I thought that there was more there, and I don't know if Johnny Ace has anything to do with it. He's the head of talent. That's who I was talking to, and he just kept, telling me things that never came to fruition. And it was, just kind of common sense is going. It wasn't like this before, I mean, I was getting more attention, and they seemed, a lot more intrigued in what I could do and things. So and maybe some of my greenness too. Still, I mean, I was still really green. You know, I probably didn't stand up for myself enough. You know, like they started telling me not to do any of the springboard drop kicks on these dart matches.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember who told me that from the office, but they're like, these are dart matches, and this is just a warm up for the crowd. And like, if you go and start high flying, and I knew why, because I mean, I was 6'4", 260 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And you're doing springboard drop kicks and stuff, and they said, yeah, don't, you know, keep a little more generic on the match. And you know, I should have been like, no, I'm working for a spot, bro.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be like in football when I'd have offensive linemen tell me, let's take it easy today, and I'm like, oh, it's good for you to say, man. You know, you're a starter and I'm a freshman. I'm like, I'm gonna whip your butt, and I'm trying to get a spot, you know. So I think it was just kind of a not really knowing to kind of stand up for yourself and go, hey, you know, be a little bit louder, you know, because you know, only later on did I really find out, you know, Vince really liked that. Like he, you know, that was a thing, you know, and had I known that, I would have been like, Vince, what are we doing? You know, because he was I talked to Vince a lot backstage, was good friends with Shane in terms of just at the shows, and we always talked and got along and had a good little banner together and stuff. And there seemed to be like a cool thing there. Like there was a time where I finished a dart match, and this was when Taker and Austin were doing their thing, and they were going to have a backstage scuffle. And one of the agents came up to me and said, hey, we want you to come out and be a security guard for this pre-tape for this thing with Austin and Taker. I was like, okay. So I walk out there, and I'm standing there listening to how things are going to go down. And I see Vince and Shane talking, and they're looking at me, and Shane comes up and he goes, what are you doing over here? And I said, well, I'm a part of this security thing and he goes, no, you're not doing that. We're not going to expose you on TV like that. Like, you know, you're out. He goes, who told you that? And I told him at the time who told me to be there. And he went up to him. He said, Scott's out. He's not, you know, he's not doing this. We don't want to waste this on it. It was like that. So I was like, you know, I felt like I had a good, you know, rapport there, you know, with that, and that they believe I can do something, you know, a little bit more. And then, I mean, the only other thing I know, the only other time they were going to put me on TV, they were going to actually tag me with Val Venus on like a pre-tape, like for Heat or one of those shows. And I had wrestled the night before against D'Lo Brown, and I had taken a clothes on weird somehow and just really torched my neck, which already had a neck thing from football. And I couldn't move. Like I was locked. Like it was just, you know, doing the whole Frankenstein and really painful, and just like a blowtorch and like coming down my arm. And they're like, yeah, it was supposed to be me and Val Venus against the Headbangers. And I was like, I can't move. And at the time I'm thinking like, man, I don't want to debut this way, you know, like if I have a bad match and go out there and can't do it, because I would have been limited and things that I could do. And again, it wasn't anything live. It's not like I was in a storyline, because if I had already been on TV, I mean, I would have gone out there. If I was already in, I wouldn't have missed, you know. And Michael Hayes was like, hey, don't worry about it, man. Like, it's no big deal. We'll do something next week, you know, with it. And, you know, you're like, you know, you're injured. You're not hurt. You're like injured. So, you know, and then they never came back to it. And so I don't know if it was something there, like, you know, and so just all that kind of stuff kind of started leading up to that point where I was just like, you know, this is it. You know, I'm kind of at my wit's end with it.
We have time for one more fan question that I promised I'd get to. The fan's calling it his most important question. Do you have a hard body Harrison story? A guy I know you worked in WCW.
Probably the only story. It's not going to be anything spectacular, but the first dart match that Pez Wiley got me on, it was supposed to be against hard body Harrison, and hard body was. I guess pun intended, was hard to work with, you know, a little bit. And I was like, I just don't know how good of a match we could have, because we had done stuff down at the power plant. I was like, I just never felt comfortable with him. He, it was a little hard to move around, and things like that. And I was just like, I need this to look good. So I went to Jody Hamilton. I was like, anyway, I can get out of this match with Hardbody and put, at the time it was Luther Biggs. I don't know if you remember Luther Biggs. He did the coach thing with Glacier, and Glacier was like the coach, I think it was. And I think actually Luther was the original Big Sexy.
Oh wow.
Because before, I think, or I don't know if Kevin had started to use it, but it's really close, because Luther had on he wore the wrestling singlet, and he had Big Sexy on it.
Wow.
But it was Luther. Luther could move well, and we worked at the power plant together, and was really smooth and had good timing. And I was like, I need to look good, and I want this to be, and it was an opportunity for Luther too, because he had never worked a dart match, and he was a friend. We hung out outside of the business, so it was like an opportunity for Luther. And that would be my Hardbody, because I really didn't hang with Hardbody other than the power plant. But he was very into himself, and he was very much like, he had his way of doing things, and it was comical, and on how you're supposed to do this, and you're supposed to do that, and people were just like, okay, but nobody had any idea of what was going to become of what road path he was going to go down.
Well, I'm sure he's not watching tonight from whatever correctional facility he's in now. Scott, you've really been amazing with your time today. I've really enjoyed going deep into your career. My final question is one that maybe is difficult to delineate, right off the tip of the hat. But if you had to boil it down to your most proudest achievement in the business, what would that, or career highlight, what would that be? Maybe both.
There's probably a couple. I got one time I was getting paychecks from WCW and WWF at the same time. I don't know how many guys have done that. I'm sure probably some have, but when I signed with WWF, I was still getting paid by WCW, so I was getting checks from both companies. So it was pretty cool on Monday to go to the mailbox, and there's Titan Sports and Turner Sports checks in the mail. That was pretty cool. I would say it was my match with Benoit. Just for the mere fact that it was Benoit. It was my I don't know if I don't know if I'd wrestled Mark Starr yet or not. I don't think so. I think it was my first Nitro match.
Yeah.
And I remember Chris was just really generous and cool. And I was just like, what do you want to do? And he didn't know me. I mean, obviously he'd seen, some of my work, but not a lot, because I just didn't have a lot on the resume at the time. And he was like, hey, what do you want to, you got any ideas, any suggestions? Like, just tell me kind of what you I see you do like springboard and stuff, and we can work some of that. And I said, you tell me where you want to go. I said, the only thing if I can make one suggestion, maybe on the entrance, because I'm not supposed to be in the match. It was supposed to be Raven wrestling it. And because the Raven rules, Raven was going to pull me in, put me in the match. So I said, I'm not supposed to be there. So maybe I come in hot. And I said, just start chopping me. Like, I'll slide in and come charge, just chop, and then we'll go from there. And we kind of did it that way. And we just were like, hey, we'll kind of fill it in from there. And we kind of just went with it from there. And of course we had some of the spots. I took that match as, okay, this is my pay-per-view. Like, this is going to be my, like, really time to make an impression, because no one had really seen me like work, because I'd only done the MGM stuff, and not everybody stayed for those shows. If you weren't on the show, on any of those shows, you could leave. So I was like, this is going to be my moment. So I was like, I'm going to do it like it's the heavyweight championship is on the line, and it's main event at a pay-per-view. And, put in all three of springboards. I did a back elbow springboard, I think, and I did a springboard drop kick, and then I missed with like a springboard leg drop. And it was a really good, solid match. And after the match, I remember going in the back, and Chris was like, Eric Bischoff was there, Arn was there, because I think Arn was the agent on that match. And they were like, oh my God, great match. And Chris goes, I'll work with this kid anytime, anywhere. And Arn came up and was, congratulating me on it. And Eric Bischoff came up and said, you just made your career tonight. Which it didn't work that way. But another thing where I can't figure why they didn't do more, with me. But yeah, that'd probably be the real pinnacle for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tremendous match for sure. Scott, I know you have a Facebook, but are there any other platforms that the fans can follow you on the social media or otherwise?
Yeah, I've got Instagram, Scott Sickboy Vick. I just got I'm pretty fresh to Facebook and the whole social media. I just joined Facebook just over a week ago. I had been off of it. I'd never been on it. I just kind of stayed out of the post wrestling spotlight. And, other than doing, I'd done some shows with Lodi, some indie shows at times here and there, but I just kind of stayed out of it. And I was never a big fan of the social media stuff. I was just it was nice and having just, my private time, me, and I just, I didn't get into it. And people for years, hey, you should do it. You should go on. And, and then with Instagram and X, and as all those things started to develop, I was just like, you can use this as a business platform. And I kind of started getting a bug to get back into wrestling a little more and go, I've got a story to tell. It's pretty cool. And I haven't, no one really knows it. No one knows a lot of the details as far as, things, that I did in it, road stories, just my career in general. And of course the Katie Vick deal. And so, I was like, I'm, getting up there, I'm at 52. And I'm like, if I'm ever going to do anything again, like now's the time to start, to do something, because I'm still in, relatively good shape. I got to get in a little bit better shape, but I want to get back in the ring on a more consistent basis and do some stuff, because my body's still pretty healthy. I didn't spend all those years, it's not like I've been bumping for, the last 10, 15 years nonstop on a regular basis. So it's like, everything feels pretty good. So that kind of started the whole social media thing. So right now I'm in the infancy of the Facebook and even the Instagram, and just trying to weave my way through and learn as I go. But yeah, those are the only two platforms right now. And I'm trying to add to it. And I'm very technologically inept. So it's, and it's come so far, just even when Facebook first started, to where it's at now and Instagram, and how you use those platforms. And I'm trying to, I'm really cutting my teeth on it and trying to learn. But those are the two that I have now, and hopefully, start to develop and get a little bit more, into it, and get some stuff out there and take this a little bit further.
Well, sir, I really appreciate that you took the time to do a very rare interview with us today. We'll keep in touch.
Sure.
And I know when you hit the ring again, it's going to be a big deal. So thank you once again for coming on the Cheap Heat Productions podcast tonight. Absolutely.
Thank you, man.
Well, fans, that's it for this great and epic rare interview with Scott Sickboy Vick. I want you to follow him on the socials, keep up with what he's doing, and we'll see you next time here back once again on the Cheap Heat Productions podcast. Until then, Jack Kilby saying thanks for watching. Thank you for watching this video. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Cheap Heat Productions. Don't forget to hit the notification button and you won't miss any of our upcoming interviews, recurring programs, or entertainment